Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Pittsford Board of Education meeting. If you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I please get a motion on the agenda?
So moved. Second?
All those in, any edits? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. If I could please welcome Ms. Konar to the podium for her report.
The one and only. Please stand.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. This is slipping. I'm not happy. First of all, I would like to introduce everybody to my family, they're here tonight. My husband, Alan Osborne, everybody calls him Coach because while he was teaching, he was also a coach, fabulous coach. My daughter-in-law, Jill, my grandson, Isaac, who's in 6th grade at Calkins Road, my son, Gabe, and Eliana is on his lap, and Eliana is a kindergartner at Mendon Center, and my grandson, Chris, who's in 2nd grade at Mendon Center, and my daughter-in-law, Patty, who is a teacher at Sutherland High School. Oh, thank you. This is wonderful.
You're out of time.
I am just warming up. And thanks to all my Jeff Road friends that surprised me and showed up tonight. So, this is definitely a celebration. Now I will start. Good evening. I have had the opportunity to present to the Board of Education many times over the past decades as a building principal. On some of these occasions, I show up. Tonight is one of those occasions. I have also been aware of the continued thirst for data. Data makes our world go round as it informs our next lesson in the classroom and our following action steps as a district. This presentation is chock full of data. It is subtle, crafty, but substantial, so please listen closely to the story. I'm living my wonderful life. I'm minding my own business when Sean Clark calls. He asked me if I would be interested, and I leave the conversation with, let me think about it, please. I then open up my drawer of pearls and ask if any of my pearl necklaces are up for the task at hand. And I could almost hear the necklaces saying, shouting, pick me, choose me. So I walk into Jeff Road Elementary on Monday, January 9th, to introduce myself, and this is what I see. I see Annie Sanford, Carrie Maslin, and Tori Barra, all Sutherland grads who are teachers. I see Julie Wilson, Melanie Ernst, and Evie Costanza, my grandson's past teachers. I see Mary Kokinda, an ILT buddy from way back. I see Liz Bartolotta, a Sutherland parent. I see Dwayne Serbone, a friend for the years. Then I see Laura Grafoni wearing a Mickey Mouse headband. She's a new bestie that I just didn't know yet. I then see Barb Shapiro with her reading dog, actually reading a book as he's walking along. A past colleague and always a wonderful friend. I also see a staff that is ready to create a new future. I see a staff with fortitude. They showed up. They are a force of all that is good. They are ready to carve a new path. So here we go. We are creating, we are digging in, we are innovative. classroom communities are in design to phase in for the 23-24 school year. These communities run deeper than class lists. It will be a classroom where students, teachers, and staff can thrive, tap into each other's blend of strengths and needs to be our best, where we all watch out for each other. We are weaving our incident management team and emergency preparedness into our lives at JRE to build a sense of security and empowerment. We are going all techie with the parent questionnaire for placement. We are looking for efficiency with a nod to our families that gather information and communicate virtually. We are in partnership with PTSA, our co-presidents here tonight, to give our students a rich enhancement to school life. We have a video for you. It's all about us, taken from January to April. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to Aaron Brady, and thanks to Anthony Juris, who knows better than to let me push buttons. So I will let him push this button.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here, you can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Here come bad news, talking this and that. Well, give me all you got and don't hold it back. Well, I should probably warn you, I'll be just fine. No offense to you, don't waste your time. Here's why. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Hey, go. Bring me down, can't none
That's us. Lots to celebrate. So to conclude, one of our first tenets of education, watch the action, determine outcomes, and plan going forward using the end as our beginning. And this is the action I see at Jeff Road. I see a community of school family. I see a full staff who gives without reservation, without stipulation, and with purpose. I see a full staff who strengthens us all at JRE and our full district. I see a full staff with an open mind, a warm heart, and a listening ear. It has been an honor to serve. Thank you for thinking of me.
Ms. Konar,
My other son.
oh. Ms. Konar, thank you for answering the phone when Sean called, and thank you for that presentation. It was great.
I assume there are no questions.
I'm just I will add, I want to thank your family for sharing you with us. It's super hard for parents and students and staff to go through a mid-year transition and leadership in any building. And when Sean and I were talking about who we could possibly call, you were the first one that came to mind. And just as a side, Liz and I were both colleagues as principals. I was a lot younger than that. I was just a baby. But I always looked up to Liz as a principal colleague, and she probably has the most beautiful heart that you could find. And what Jeff Road really needed this year more than ever was love, needed guidance, someone that can facilitate student learning. And the song was perfect because I'm happy. You brought a lot of happiness and joy to Jeff Road and to the district, and we thank you, Liz, for stepping up and for all you do.
Well, thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the 2023-2024 proposed budget presentation and adoption.
So there's 75 people here for Liz. You do not have to stay for the entire board meeting. So, Coach, thank you. We'll call a timeout here for you.
I should say, Mike, since I'm there volunteering with my dog Gilly, who actually the first graders read to Gilly, and you know what they say about Mrs. Podar? She's the most fashionable. First graders. That's what they tell me. I shall tell you what.
Depending on her.
Okay, well, here we go. So the agenda for tonight is to go over our guidelines, our enacted budget, proposed budget, summary of revenue, all the propositions that you'll see at the end. I would highlight that none of the propositions have any impact on the taxes, then answer any questions and listen to any comments you might have. The purpose of tonight is we think about where we've been. So you've heard so far well over 3 hours of presentations relative to the budget. And that primarily was done behind the scenes with different administrators and staff that have any significant control over budgetary areas. That work has been brought together. It's been processed through the district planning team several times. It's been juxtaposed to the tax cap. And tonight, at the end, should the proposed budget be approved, it will shift from the work of the district staff to that being your budget. if that makes sense. So with that, you've heard in all of our presentations how important our budget guidelines are, and these serve as the cornerstone to how we decide to spend our money, how we make decisions relative to our taxpayer money, to the experiences we want from our students. So in here you'll see things like it was a priority for us this year to make sure that our schools remain safe from a physical and emotional standpoint, that our facilities remain safe, and that we continue to increase that safety. You'll hear things throughout. It's critical that in our school district that we continue with a rigorous, engaging curriculum that supports our students. We believe in the whole child, so recognizing that all students have different needs, different desires, different interests. We provide a breadth of opportunities for our students, and we did not want to lose those. We also wanted to make sure that we continue to make sure our students feel welcomed and affirmed, and bring in the concept of inclusionary practices so our students can feel safe and validated. Our whole mantra for the last several years is that it doesn't matter who you are when you walk through our doors. You're part of our Pittsford family, and we want to make sure that you feel good about being here, and we've done everything that we can to promote that. Professional development is huge in any organization. So you'll see in our budget, a budget that reflects our need to continue a high level of professional development so we can continue to be on the cutting edge of best practices, especially as we consider bringing on new staff. This year, we have about 43 retirements when you look at paraprofessionals and teachers combined. That means those are 43 new bodies into the Pittsford Central School District, and professional development is an area that allows all of us to continue to grow together. Also this year, we recognize that we've gone through, our community and our nation has gone through a significant impact, whether you call it a recession or high inflation, but the cost of living has gone up. So we need to make sure that we not only provide a high level of engaging, rigorous curriculum and experiences for our students, but also do that in a way that's sensitive to our community. And so we've done that, not only thinking about this year, but the next 5 years in advance of how we're going to make sure we're able to maintain and sustain the high quality that we deliver. But we're doing it this year with a tax cap that's at 0.08, which is not 0.8, it's 0.08, which means it's very close to zero, which means that we're asking the community for very little of an increase to the levy, while at the same time being able to sustain a high level of education for our students. We have leaned on our partners. We do a lot of sharing with our town and our village. I think it's a feather in our cap that we maintain the highest level bond rating that a school can have. We've just passed a referendum at the highest rate in our history, and that is important to note because that money will help with our infrastructure, which will help with the community's investment, which will help our students be able to continue in education in the type of environment physically that we would expect in Pittsford. We've done a lot of advocacy with legislators, not only relative to funding, but other areas. In particular, and of note, is the exhaustive practices of going to Albany and writing and signing petitions and going on the Senate floor and asking for more state aid for our fair share, and we're finally getting it. So while we have a 0.08 tax cap, we're able to offset that revenue because our state aid is finally becoming whole again. It's been a tough year to try to figure out our budget because there's a lot of moving parts. Some of the parts helped us this year. Some of them hurt us this year. And our goal is to figure out all these moving parts in the next 5 to 7 years and how they're going to impact us. Our utilities have almost doubled in cost this year. I think we're right around $600,000 more in utility costs. Our funds from the federal government will be expiring next year. So we've had about $6 million in federal funds. Some of them went away this year. The rest will go away next year. So as part of the long-term planning, we're going to have to make decisions about what we're doing with staffing that's specifically allocated due to federal funds. So that will be in future budgets. We've done a lot with bus drivers and other hard-to-fill positions, which has impacted our budget, specifically because of compression and minimum wage. So we are forecasting minimum wage to be at $15. We have several employees that are under 15, so we had to raise their hourly rate to 15, which caused a domino effect based on how long other staff members in that area have been with us. So that is an increase to our budget. We also have more students that are attending our BOCES programs, which are phenomenal, which means that they're with us part-time and they're at BOCES part-time to learn a trade or a craft, and being able to leave not only with a Pittsford diploma, but with additional degrees and certifications for being workforce ready. We've also finished this year our one-to-one initiative, so you'll see that as part of the budget. So all of our students will have access to a one-to-one laptop as well as accessibility. So you've seen where we've been, and where we're heading. May 16th is our budget vote. This slide really is a huge benefit. While the state has not finalized their budget, it's late for the first time in a long time. It's really late. They continue to offer extenders, which means that we feel very comfortable that what's in the budget will maintain in the budget. The other part that's really positive here is that in the governor's budget this year, we are receiving what the formula says we should receive for state aid, which is a huge positive. So I'm going to turn over to Mike Vespi, but before I do, Mike joined us this year, and I had a lot of balls in the air with bus drivers and with a referendum and with federal funds and with our budget. And he and Leanne have done an amazing job putting all these pieces together and creating our budget in real short order. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Leanne. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Mike.
All right, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. And I'm going to again give credit to Leanne. She really puts everything together. And when we look at the process, I'm going to just back up real quick. We start the process officially in terms of the calendar in November. We had meetings with every budget originator throughout the district. I think we took away about 35 bullet points, and everybody had an opportunity to talk about what the current budget offers, what improvements they'd like to see, and really that helped put this budget together. So there's a lot behind the scenes that took place before we got to that first budget workshop. Final requests were submitted in January, and then as you see, that set the stage for the budget workshops that Mr. Pirro mentioned. You know, you've already spent probably 3.5, 4 hours, going through this information at our previous meeting. So really a lot of work goes into the budget. While we say that the budget process officially starts November 10th, it's really a year-round process in terms of administering it. It's just that the development actually starts then. In terms of the state aid estimates, it's just an outline of some cautions. There's a lot of times people will look in social media or find an article in terms of state aid. These are estimates, and interestingly enough, I had some colleagues who are new to the field say, "Oh gosh, what are we going to do, right? Or can we ask the board to adopt a budget because the state budget is in time?" And if you've been in the game long enough, we were always used to not having state budgets on time. So what we do is we build in contingencies, and we're conservative in terms of our estimates. So the numbers don't always match up to the estimates because they're based on estimates of expenses in this current year. So we're always conservative there. The other aspect that's unique, if from an advocacy standpoint, if we continue to have late budgets, we're really going to have to talk about that, because in the past, boards of education have been able to modify the actual tax levy in August when you want to set the rate. You're no longer able to do that because of the tax cap legislation. So this will have to be something that we really keep an eye on. But again, as Mr. Perry alluded to, good news, you see about $4.3 million more in foundation aid after, really more than a decade of advocating for the district's fair share of foundation aid. The district has really been underfunded for the past 10 years in terms of state support. And when that happens from a revenue standpoint, the taxpayers pick up the difference. And so it's amazing, and it happened at the right time in terms of our revenue, as you'll see in the next slide. You see that property tax levy proposal is 0.08. And as you'll recall, in the first budget workshop, I covered the tax cap factors and assumptions in depth. When we talk today about the discussion tonight, the nice thing is we're now on the other side of, we know exactly what it is based on what happened in terms of the March 28th referendum. So some other significant factors, you've got the overall state aid increase, right? And then you can see the increase in the county sales tax budget, and then the other local is the interest earnings increase that is good on one hand in terms of our investments, but maybe not so much on the economy. When we put all of this together in terms of a balanced budget, this is the first time you've seen it all. This is all coming together tonight. The budget to budget increase is 3.95%, or $155.5 million. And you can see in each of the budget program areas the changes in each of the areas. And I'm not going to, for the sake of time, really, Mike just mentioned all of the significant factors that have gone into that. In all of the presentations from the administrative team, we've really went, school by school and area by area in terms of what's changed within this budget, including the undistributed budget. You'll see that decrease is based on debt service. So what are we looking at? All schools proposed budget, increase of roughly 5.97%. And you can see that increase in career and technical education that was mentioned. The elementary school budget that was previously outlined in the budget workshop 3, middle schools, and then high schools. Central student services, an overall increase of 2.84%. And then 6.75 in the central instructional services. Central admin, really the only increase of substance is for the automated voting software, which is the first year expense, and we put it through BOCES, so we'll get revenue to offset that expense in the following year. And I would say that it really went well in terms of the March 28th vote. So I think we're already seeing a return on our investment in terms of less labor in the back office in terms of the budget poll books and the efficiency. So it's been outstanding so far. Really, support services is the story. We've got the increase in transportation contract expenses, contract transportation, and in salaries for a renegotiated contract. And then the big change and factor on the budget is the reduction in debt service, which really we talked a lot about from December until now as we went through the process with the capital project vote. So what does it all look like together? You can see 40% in schools, 37% unallocated expenses, 12% in support services, and 7% in central student services. And we look at the administrative ratio, which I'll show at the budget hearing. We try to keep that number under 10% when we look at the 3-part budget. This is just a different way of looking at the budget overall by object of expense. This is what's required by the state when we look at the chart of accounts. So you can see overall the increases in salaries and benefits really constitute, if you look at those two numbers combined, really makes up the majority of a school district budget. We talk a lot about supplies and materials, but you can see from a percent of budget standpoint, it's really minor. And again, that huge decrease in the district's debt service. Again, some information to look at salary and benefits are roughly 79% by object, and then what the increase is. And then this is a different way to look at our revenues. What you see is 72% of the revenue comes from the tax levy, 18% from state aid, and that's where we've actually seen a positive shift in the last 2 years. We are going to continue to advocate for more state support, which is difficult for our district because of the wealth factors being above average wealth slightly, but in and the factor that drives in terms of the formula. So we always have to be very conservative because we do derive the majority of our revenue from the tax levy. Not this year though, based on that 0.08, which is really nil. So now I'm going to get into the legal requirements of what takes place. So the first aspect of the vote is to vote on the budget. Then the second aspect is the capital reserve fund. And this is for the normal bus purchase, which is no impact because we're using savings to pay for the new buses. We're going to create a new capital reserve because we've used all of the capacity in the previously approved reserve. And then we spent a lot of time during the capital project phase of our discussions discussing the swimming facilities reserve. That has to be voter authorized as well as a new capital reserve. We've covered the information on bus purchases. We are reducing the fleet by 4 buses. We're looking to withdraw $1.7 million, which will generate about $1.2 million in aid back, so roughly about 69%. And here's a breakdown of the buses. We are purchasing for the first time a 7-passenger SUV because we're hoping that if we continue to experience a labor shortage, we can use this vehicle to do more individualized, specialized runs that come up rather than using a big bus. And we found several times that this year that would be very helpful. Again, no impact on the tax levy or tax rate. And here are the actual reserves that you'll see when you go in to vote. Just some summary facts. 0.08 in terms of the tax levy is really the smallest tax levy increase since the inception of the tax cap. So this is really, I think, a positive news in terms of putting this budget forward. And 3.95% from a budget-to-budget increase is really, I know it seems like it's high, but it's really not in comparison to some of the inflation-based budgets that I've seen in the county. So I think what you're going to see from a summary standpoint is we're probably one of the lower budget-to-budget increases in the county. Again, I think a great job was done in terms of foundation aid and what took place, and that's something that we're very happy about. We're going to have to monitor it because now that the foundation aid is fully phased in and fully paid, we're not really sure what's going to happen next in terms of future state aid proposals. So we always celebrate for the moment in terms of this budget proposal, but we're certainly going to be cautious in a long-range financial plan as we look to the future. So Board of Action required is, first, you'll see in your packet the authorization of the budget adoption, and then you also have to approve the property tax report card, which is attached in your packet. And then Leanne tomorrow, after that's approved, because it's a requirement to do so within 24 hours, will submit that information to the state. The state will then make sure that that information is published throughout the entire state prior to the budget vote day. The tax cap and proposed tax levy submission now is official once you vote. So we'll go make adjustments, and I can finalize my memo to Mr. Pirro. And we've already taken care of the administrative salary disclosure. I am required, and I'm going to be brief, but I am required to discuss the ARP, and that's the federal funds that we have remaining that need to be spent. And then I've got to review the district's plan for foundation aid. Talk about a little bit of irony. the state has withheld the district's foundation aid for over a decade. And then when they finally give it to us, which was promised to us starting in 2007, we have to do a plan and talk about how we're going to spend the money because it exceeds a certain percentage. So we've met as an administrative team and discussed that, and we had to do the same thing last year. We publish the information on our website. We make it available for public comment and feedback. So that is a requirement. So those are all the legal requirements. So the American Rescue Plan, the ARP funding, we're using it for coordinator of diversity and inclusion and homelessness, tutoring center staff. We're doing quite a bit in terms of our network and to protect it. When is online testing? It's tomorrow. So we've got a lot of funds to make sure that that's all going to go smoothly and employee benefits. We have done some amendments for mental health services, literacy coaches, math and reading specialists, and potentially we're going to look at doing an amendment to get more devices in terms of a replacement plan or supplies. So the information's available. I'm required to cover this publicly and then ask for any feedback from the community. Got to do the same thing with foundation aid. The increase, again, that it's money that really has been owed to us. There's criteria for what we can spend it on. So I outline that. And then just in summary, we have enhanced and increased staffing to meet the needs. And some of the staffing was in place, but the staffing is there for increasing graduation rates and eliminating the achievement gap, et cetera. We've used money for supplies and materials and software, again, for hardware, network security, so some of the same things. This money is going to be used to offset utilities. It's our general operating expense. We've had that huge increase in utilities, and the same thing for transportation. And then certainly addressing social emotional health and adequate resources for our ELL students. So roughly $5.8 million. We have a $6 million plan that covers what we're going to use the funds for. Again, we're open to comments and feedback in that period before we officially submit the plan to the State Education Department. Public hearing is May 9th. I'll cover some of the same materials. I'll probably go a little quicker. And I also have to cover the budget in the three-part budget format. When I do the public hearing, I also talk a little bit more about the property tax report card, in particular, the use of reserve funds and what we intend to do with it. So that's also enclosed for your consideration tonight. And then, of course, we have the budget vote. Questions?
All right. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the proposed budget and the propositions. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Emily. Any discussion? I'd just like to quickly say that, the budget boils down to a number, a tax rate and a levy rate, but so much goes into it. A lot of it's been discussed tonight, but as Mr. Vespi mentioned, it's a year's work, an ongoing process to develop the budget. And Mr. Pirro, Mr. Vespi, Leanne, all the section heads, all the different district planning teams put countless hours in developing that budget, and the presentations that we see here that help the board synthesize all this information together. So I just want to give a heartfelt thanks on behalf of the board to everybody involved in that budget process. We really do appreciate it. It helps the district operate in a very efficient and effective way. So thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to approval of the February 28th minutes. I will be abstaining, as will Emily. Second? Thank you. Any edits? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Well, I shall be passing, I need a motion, rather, on the March 14th minutes. Renee, you'll be abstaining. Can I get a motion and a second? Thanks. It was Emily and Sarah. Any edits? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries as well. Thank you. Moving on to Board of Education reports. Several meetings. I know, Sarah, you wanted to report out?
Thanks, Ted. I just wanted to quickly say we had our last legislative committee meeting last week. We had Regent Norwood come in and talk to us a little bit about what's going on from his office, and he does a really nice job of kind of bringing everything back to people and students, and sometimes that gets lost when we're talking to Albany and talking about numbers and aid and everything else that we need for our district. But I love the way that he brings people back to the forefront, and just like we do here in Pittsford, students first. So it's a great presentation. Unfortunately, Regent Hale was not able to join us, but we look to schedule something with him in the near future. And I know we have on here a meeting for May 3rd, but that's been canceled, so we won't be needing that to wrap up our season. So.
Great,
That's all.
thank you. Anybody else have anything? All right, moving on to dates to remember. There are a number of them, starting with April 24th. It's the PTSA Lifetime Achievement Awards. We have a couple past board members that'll be being honored there, so hopefully we'll see all of you there. Schools will be closed on April 28th for Superintendent's Conference Day. May 4th, we have a visit over to Sutherland. By a show of hands, who's be attending? Great, thank you. Next regularly scheduled board meeting will be May 9th, and got the May 24th is Monroe County School Boards Association annual meeting. With that, got to do a motion to receive the capital project vote. I need a motion to approve the capital project bond resolution. Not that one? Just a regular motion of acceptance to the record of the March 28th capital project vote. Can I get a motion for that? Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Dave. Any kind of discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving to the BOCES annual election. By a show of hands for each seat, no motions or seconds needed. We're going to be doing 3 seats for the BOCES board. Looking to resolve to cast 1 vote for election for Amy West, resident of Honey Falls, Lima Central School District. All those in favor? Any opposed? Great. Seat number 2, cast 1 vote for the election of Lisa Layton, resident of Penfield Central School District. All those in favor? Any opposed? Great. And for the 3rd seat, election of Rebecca Hicks, resident East Rochester Union Free School District. All those in favor? Any opposed? Excellent. And then on the administrative budget vote for BOCES, ask for approval by a show of hands for the 2023-2024 BOCES administrative budget. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to Mr. Vespi and the financial report.
Yes, for your consideration is the acceptance of the March Treasurer's Report. Of significance is the $2.3 million received in taxes from Monroe County. So we're made whole by the county, and then an effort is made to collect those taxes. So that revenue came in on the revenue side. On the school lunch side, we had earlier conversations. We continue to do well. Participation is up, and that's offset also by the fact that we're at minimal labor and short labor in some areas. So we continue to do well in that budget, and in the spirit of maintaining really a neutral budget, we continue to look at investing in our equipment and replacement and repair. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Can I please get a motion to accept the treasurer's report? Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Jeff. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, also for your consideration is the 3rd quarterly extra classroom activities report.
Can I get a motion on the 3rd quarter extracurricular activities report? Thank you, David. Thanks, Renee. Any edits? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
All right, next for your consideration is an adjustment to the tax tertiary reserve, and that's from the reserve fund to unrestricted fund balance. And the reason for this is because we recently settled one of the tax certs, and we had additional funds for a worst-case scenario budgeted. So before we do a year-end, we have to do a reconciliation, and we have to transfer those funds out. So that those funds will go to unrestricted fund balance, which at the end of the year, if we need to reallocate into any of the reserve funds, we'll have the ability to do that. But it's better to be proactive to do this now than to let it become an audit finding, where they say that we're holding on to too many funds. And so that's what necessitated this. By doing it early, this gets us ready for the audit at year end.
Okay. Please get a motion on the tax tertiary reserve. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Renee. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
Next for your consideration is the approval of next year's food service budget and prices. Again, very proactive to do it now, to get that set. Two key points in terms of the food service program. One is we're watching very carefully what's going to happen at the state level in terms of funding the school food services program, because it's both breakfast and lunch. So if that happens, we may be in a situation where we consider moving back into that regulated program, depending on the financial considerations. Certainly that would take some time, and it would also require more staffing, which we are already struggling to get. But we would have to take a look at that at that point, right? The other thing that's significant is obviously, in light of the reports that I've been doing on a monthly basis, there's no recommended change to the pricing that currently exists. So I think that's positive news in terms of next year.
Very good. May I please get a motion on the 2023-2024 food services budget and prices? Thank you, Robin. Thank you, David. Any discussion?
Quick question. Mike, you just mentioned that if we did go back into the state program, that we would need more staffing. Why would that be?
So unfortunately, there's pros and cons to everything. Unfortunately, when you have a state program, what we serve and how we serve it is very regulated. And oftentimes being in the program leads to food waste, but you have to put the items on the plate. You have to offer them. And so with the requirements, the nutritional requirements, right, and the regulations, and then what's required in terms of the offerings, we would need more staff to assist with the preparation and what we have to have available. But on the flip side, the funding will come directly based on participation. And I will say this, to be positive, to end on a positive note, the menus and the foods that are available in the program compared to when the regulations changed, some 7 or 8 years ago, there's more options that are, that are healthier and appealing, if you will, than kind of the shock to the system when it first happened from a regulatory change. So, just to be fair, things have changed, so it wouldn't necessarily be that negative. But we'd have to look carefully at it, obviously.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah, kind of. I might have a question. I'm not sure. If that was to happen and the universal lunches were maybe approved over the summer, is that something that then would go to the state, or would it, if it was a federal program, would it just automatically, we would have that in New York State and we would maybe even consider it for the fall, or would we be looking further out than that?
No, the state would, the state obviously would authorize the funding, right? So that's a big decision from the state standpoint. And then the earliest that I could see this happening would probably be for the following year, because we'd have to send staff to training. We'd have to make sure that we have a plan going forward. And the other complicator, to speak frankly, and we have, a longstanding director that is retiring. And so we're going to have, new staff that's in place. So with a combination of those things from a leadership viewpoint, I think it would be something that we would consider for the following year. Maybe we'd be able to run it in tandem maybe a year from now and then implement for the following year. Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, for your consideration is the capital project bond resolution. This is the resolution, it comes from our attorney. It's a requirement to basically authorize now the financing of the project based on the approval on March 28th. So this is the procedural vote that you need.
Okay, can I please get a motion to approve the capital project bond resolution? Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Robin. I will be doing a roll call vote. Please say either yay or nay. Myself, yay. Robin? Yay. Dave Burke?
Yes.
Jeff Casey? Emily Kay? Sarah Palucio?
Yay.
Renee Sanchez Kazakis?
Yay.
The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to Mr. Clark in the Human Resources.
If we could, just bring up the Sutherland easement.
Yeah,
Oh,
just.
sorry.
Yep,
Sorry
just,
about that.
so real quick, this has already been something that the board authorized. It was quite some time ago. In order to just bring us all back up to speed in terms of the proposal, we assembled our architect, myself, Jeff Beardsley, and the representatives from the village that attended. The easement, if you picture the bus loop at Sutherland, off of the Sutherland Street, it's right, the easement would go from that top corner all the way down past the tennis courts, and it's essentially a new water main. What's changed since it was first reviewed in 2015 is they'll do that lateral drilling. So the concern was that they were originally going to have to cut down all those trees. They'll go right underneath the sidewalk, the trees, so there's very little disruption. It's not scheduled for this summer. It would happen the following summer. So our only discussion is to look and see what activities are taking place, but really minimal impact on that driveway. And it's a really good thing that we had the discussion in terms of the collaboration that Mr. Pirro mentioned earlier, because the village was considering paving that street. Now they'll hold off because once that new water main is put in, then they'll redo the hydrants across the street, so you'll have disruption there. So I didn't see anything after our meeting and discussion with our team and our architect and Jeff Beardsley that would really, change the decision that was already made. It's just now the project has been approved. So it's really just a discussion item to bring you up to speed in terms of it. I don't think there's further action that's needed at this time.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to the Human Resource Report. Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Good evening. For your consideration, we have the professional staff report. You'll see 3 school-related professional appointments, 1 supervisory technical appointment, 1 appointment for a teacher fellow, 1 administrator resignation for retirement with 28.3 years of service, 1 certificated staff resignation for retirement with 35.7 years of service. We have 18 school-related professional resignations for retirement totaling 288.49 years of service, 2 certificated staff resignations, 4 school-related professional resignations, 1 supervisory technical resignation, and we have spring coaching salaries and volunteer approvals for you as well.
May I please get a motion on the professional staff report?
So moved. Second.
Thank you and thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Next for your consideration is the support staff report. You'll see 1 clerical appointment, 1 clerical retirement with 24 years of service, 1 transportation appointment, 2 transportation resignations, 1 custodial appointment, 1 custodial resignation. We have 1 custodial retirement with 25 years of service, 1 food service appointment, and 2 food service worker retirements.
May I please get a motion on the support staff so, this is a tongue twister. Support staff report. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Next for your consideration is position auditorium and theater coordinator, which is part of the board packet. Happy to answer any questions about that if you need to.
May I please get a motion on the auditorium theater coordinator? Thank you, Renee. Thanks, Emily. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you. Next for your consideration is the position student and family engagement coordinator, which we are taking a current position that is going into retirement and just doing a little restructure with that. And the information, again, is in the board packet. Be happy to answer any questions if you need.
Okay, thank you. May I please get a motion on the student family engagement coordinator position? Thank you, Robin. Thanks, Renee. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you. And finally, we have first readings for tenure for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Moving on to student services and Ms. Katat.
Good evening. For your consideration, there is an application for ETC, which is a foreign exchange agency that would like to be considered to be added to our list of approved agencies. And if approved, they would be able to start bringing students to be considered for our foreign exchange program starting in the 23-24 school year.
Thank you. Can I get approval of the foreign exchange agency, please? Motion. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Jeff. Any discussion? Questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Special education report, Ms. Woods.
Good evening. All committee recommendations are on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Superintendent's report, Mr. Pirro.
Thank you. There is not a need for an executive session this evening. For your consideration, we do have a field trip request to Orlando, Florida, and that is for Mendon High School DECA team.
May I please get a motion for the field trip request? Thanks, Emily.
Second.
Thanks, Renee. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries.
And not to be outdone, we also have a field trip approval request to Orlando, Florida from the Sutherland High School DECA team.
Motion to approve the Sutherland High School field trip request. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Jeff. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
I'd like to thank Girl Scout Troop 60211 for their donation of $1,954.90 for the purchase of a new Gaga pit to include 5 balls and a rule sign to be placed at Thornell Elementary School. If you have questions about what a Gaga pit is, please ask someone other than me.
It's a lot of fun.
Is it?
It's a lot.
Okay.
You would like it.
Well, so I look forward to that. So thank you to the Girl Scout Troop for that donation. Just a couple other pieces of business to the seniors. Where'd they go? Are you kidding me? They left early? So the 2 seniors that are left, you could take tomorrow off. Congratulations for being in your final quarter of your high school career, and thank you for being here tonight. If you could text them, it's too late. I am not signing your forms anymore. I just wanted to say congratulations to our seniors for this being your final marking period. Finish strong, please. Try not to sneak out of your classes like you do boardrooms. And go ahead and get out of here. You two can feel free to go too. Have a good night, everyone. All right. This week we are meeting with several different agencies to talk about the PGA tournament, especially as it relates to Allen Creek. A little bit worried about the location of Allen Creek to Oak Hill and what that traffic pattern is going to look like. I do know internally we're looking at hiring security for the front of Allen Creek for both any unanticipated traffic that may try to come in, but also any pedestrians that may be trying to cut across, and that whole concept of any strangers on campus. So our last piece of business is really going to be looking at the routing, trying to better understand what streets will be one way, how it will impact our buses and our transportation with enough time to communicate to families. So that meeting, I believe, is Thursday morning. So more to come there. We've been through a whirlwind the last 2 weeks with a lot of threats, and not Pittsford, but locally. We've had evacuations, we've had lockdowns, we've had some credible threats, some not credible threats, and we've watched 5 local districts go through different types of emergency procedures. After the first one, which was Hilton, who received the pipe bomb threats, they went into an all-district evacuation, which caused us to convene our team to see how we would do a 9-school all-district evacuation, what that would look like, and what our readiness is for it. So internally, we found some gaps. We also learned a lot from Hilton. So we invited the Monroe County Sheriffs to an all-administrative meeting. We did our tabletop exercises to better prepare for different scenarios. Specifically, we talked about what would it be like for to evacuate all 9 buildings. One of the things that I really appreciate in the county is that we all share things that work well and things that don't work so well. So areas that I feel probably across the county where people would fall down, school districts would fall down, are in two areas. One is in communication to the families immediately. One of the things that we learned from Hilton was that once parents found out via social media that something was happening and that there was an evacuation, parents flooded to the schools, which caused both chaos and more of a concern relative to safety, because emergency vehicles couldn't get through, and now you're contending with crowds. And so we've worked on, and Nancy does a great job with this, along with Nancy, but the Monroe County Sheriff's public information officer, being able to communicate real quickly to families to share as much as we can in a short amount of time with a sentence that says more to come. But what we learned is we need families to understand that we know what we're doing in these incidences. And the best thing for them to do is to just wait for the next text message. We looked at our evacuation sites. We looked at our staging sites. And probably the hardest thing looking at 9 buildings and 6,000 students is that whole concept of reunification of students with their families, and what does that look like. So I will share that we have more work to do to make that process better and more comprehensive. We never really thought of a scenario because of our geographic distribution of our schools where all 9 buildings may have to evacuate, and sure enough, there's Hilton just went through one that we never thought of. So that will be work that we continue to do this now through the summer. And then the last thing I would just highlight is our capital project, again, was passed. And now the community is going to see a lull of, they're not going to see anything happen for a little bit, because now we're in the design process and we're prioritizing in the capital project what's next. Anything that we design has to be sent to the state for approval. That state approval process is around 6 months. At the worst, the years ago, it was up to a year. They're better staffed now, so our best estimate is 5 to 6 months for approval. So we are in the design phase of 10 vestibule entrances. So remember, we have the entrance here for parents and district visitors. And then we have our 9 other buildings, all with different subtle differences that we're going to have to design to make the one-door entrance as secure as possible. We're also in that design phase looking at doors, locks, cameras. So we've prioritized all the safety stuff first. That should be done in June. We have a pretty significant meeting tomorrow with our construction managers and our architects. And so we're hoping that work is done in June. We're able to submit it shortly thereafter to the state and then have approval at some point next year where we can begin in the spring all of that, the security work. The other things that we've done in the interim is we've secured all of our large rooms of assembly. So right now, our gyms, our auditoriums, this room, that prior there wasn't a mechanism to lock it from the inside, and so now that's done. So we feel like while we do have to wait, we feel a lot better waiting, knowing that we have a way if we do go into lockdown to secure in real short order every room. So I don't know if there's any questions around where we are with the capital project or with our drills. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pero. Moving on, could I please get a motion on the consent agenda? Thanks. Thanks, Robin. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Anybody have any old business? Anybody have any new business? I have one item of new business, and that is, I'd like to announce with mixed emotions that after 9 years, I will not be seeking a fourth term. I do plan to have some future remarks at a meeting in the future. With that, we will move on to public comment.
Hold on.
Yes, and we thank you for your 9 years of service,
Thank you.
Ted, your commitment and dedication to our district. And I am announcing that I am seeking a second term as a Pittsford School Board member. And please vote in the upcoming election on May 16th and budget vote. And thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Robin. Anybody else have any new business? Okay, moving on to public comment. Prior to public comment this evening, I would like to say for individuals that aren't comfortable with our public comment process or sharing your comments in this format, you can still reach the Board of Education via an email. There are alternate methods. The board meetings are to conduct necessary business in front of the public. Public comment is not a required component of the meeting. With that, we will begin our public comment for this evening. You are reminded that you are asked to state your name and address. Remember that we have young listeners watching and learning. Keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And also, I know that tonight with what's been submitted, we're going to have contrasting views on issues. Please be civil and cordial to each other and respect people's differing opinions. Our first person this evening is Michelle Marks.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Michelle. My address is 14 Ravenna Crescent. As a relatively new member of the Pittsford community, my husband and I chose to live here for a number of reasons, but chief among them was the reputation of the Pittsford School District. Like many members of our community, we value a strong public education system. One of the qualities that I personally value most in a school is helping students learn to think for themselves. I think that most of us would agree that we want our kids to graduate high school not only knowing how to solve for X, the history of World War II, and how to write a research paper, but also how to make decisions based off of available data and how to live out their own personal values. How can this happen if we are sheltering our kids and controlling the minutia of their lives? When we want to have books removed from a curriculum or from the library, we are stealing growth opportunities from our children. What better way to bring up difficult topics than through literature? I love reading books with difficult topics to my children because I want them to know that nothing is out of bounds for discussion with me or their dad. I want them to hear new thoughts and ideas and talk to us about them. In order to allow students to think for themselves, we must give them the time and space to grow while offering an open, supportive environment to discuss difficult and nuanced topics. With information and imagery available to our kids at every turn, it's more important than ever to help our kids develop their own inner voice. At the most recent Board of Education meetings, there have been comments about books which were felt to be inappropriate for high school students. One of these books is Girl in Translation by Jean Kwok. The book is a 290-page coming-of-age story about a girl who immigrated to the United States from Hong Kong. It is a fantastic book, and I can imagine it would bring up a lot of good discussion in the classroom around topics like being an immigrant, family dynamics, and the myth of the model minority, among others. And yet, because of a brief, less than 1 page, and non-graphic sexual encounter, some would have this book removed. To think that teenagers are not mature enough to deal with this topic does not give them enough credit, takes away a valuable learning opportunity, and ignores reality. Because teenagers know about, and in some cases have, sex. We cannot and should not deprive our children of learning opportunities because of topics that we are uncomfortable with. If a parent does not think a book is appropriate for their child, they should discuss their concerns with the teacher and request an accommodation for their child. I would highly encourage parents to read this book so they can discuss it with their child, because it is the best book that I've read in a long time, and it is well worth the read. I actually appreciate that it came to my attention due to the backlash it's received, because I'm a better person for having read that book. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public comment will be from Michael Shaughnessy.
Before I start, just one thought about the preparedness project that's going to be reviewed as far as lockdowns and evacuations, going to be reviewed over the summer. If there's anything critical, I guess we should do that sooner than later. I mean, we've all experienced a very traumatic situation of recent with our neighbors.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Mike Shaughnessy. I live at 4 Standish Way. My subject is the Parents' Bill of Rights Act. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who made the Parents' Bill of Rights Act a priority during the early weeks of his tenure, said Republicans were keeping our promise, our commitment to America, that parents have to have a say in their kids' education. The bill passed 213 to 208, with 5 Republicans, mostly members of the House Freedom Caucus, voting against it. It would require schools to publish course studies and a list of books kept in libraries, as well as affirm parents' ability to meet with educators, speak at school board meetings, and examine school budgets. Representative Lauren Boebert successfully added amendments that would require schools to report when transgender girls join girls' athletic teams, and transgender girls are allowed to use girls' school restrooms and locker rooms. The bill would allow and require elementary and middle school to get parents' consent to change a child's gender designation, pronouns, or name. That's the essence of the bill summary. Why was this bill needed? One can only think that as a result of some levels of irresponsibility exhibited by school boards and so many others across our area and our country, that possibly these things need to be considered and supported from a federal level. As you know and are totally aware, being a parent, it is difficult to find time outside of work and raising a family to get engaged and attend Board of Education monthly meetings. The parents, like us, at all during those stages of our lives, placed our trust in the boards of education to take care of our Pittsford children and students. The Board of Education took significant advantage of this situation over the past approximately 10 years or so, and totally failed our Pittsford Central School District children. Why did you allow that to happen? Why would anyone vote against this responsible legislation? Of the approximate 33 pornographic books searched for possible inclusion in the Pittsford Central School District library system, 12 were found so far to be in the Pittsford high schools and middle schools. This leads me to believe this is just the tip of the iceberg of the roughly 134,000 books in that population that are estimated to be across the district. Not, as it was mentioned, there are only 1 or 2 in our high school libraries in most cases, as was stated by the Board of Education. Additionally, of these Pittsford Central School District pornographic books, they exhibit a range of profanity from 33 to 1,000 words per book, or an average of 116 words per book.
If you could wrap it up.
There is a war against our children. It is extremely difficult to understand why. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Ord.
I don't want to go over 3 minutes, so I'm going to try real hard. Okay, Amy Ord, 15 Sunrise. I just want to talk to you tonight about social emotional learning. I keep hearing about that. I hear about that more than I hear about reading, writing, and math at these school board meetings. In Pittsford, instead of being traditionally for children shown to have some behavioral or emotional need where a trained psychologist or counselor works with them, now all students receive social emotional learning here. It's embedded into the curriculum K through 12, and teachers, administrators, the whole school is on board with it. It seems pretty intense here, and I've never really seen anything like it. It seems to be talked about in the classes several times a week. There's phrases. I even hear it coming through in the morning announcements at times. Every job I've ever had as an adult has been bringing SEL into school systems, and I just feel that it's more intense here than some like alternative high schools or some BOCES. I think you're throwing a ton of repetitive psychological information at the kids that is too much. I hear kids say it's like they're trying to get into our minds, or they're trying to tell us how to think. I hear parents that have said, we don't handle our problems that way. I don't want my kid to be, responding to like a stressor that way. That's not how we do it in my family. It used to be more like Mr. Rogers, how to be a good friend, resolve conflicts. But now that was called traditional SEL. That's expanded into something called transformative SEL, which focuses on mitigating inequities between individuals, kind of like making everyone the same. CASEL is the big organization behind this, that tells schools they need to integrate the content related to race, class, gender into learning, incorporate bias awareness, students' lived experiences, promote students to take action for social justice. I also see that you have information coming in from Learning for Justice. It's the child-like version of an organization called the Southern Poverty Law Center. Southern Poverty Law Center and CASEL, they're not really middle-of-the-road players that just care about kids. They are far leaning to one-side organizations. The Southern Poverty Law Center is radical. They're on the news a lot for starting fires at like police training centers. They harm pregnancy counseling centers. And, I saw this online. When you go on their website, they have a hate map, and you can just look around the country, and under that hate map, there's people, they call people that are traditional Catholics, and other churches are listed. So, as a parent and a psychologist, I don't consent to my kid learning this, or from a curriculum like this, especially, K through 12. I wouldn't want to see what my kid is going to end up at, like when she was a senior. Point blank, social emotional learning can be a strong intervention used to change behavior, done by trained professionals when needed. To every parent in the room here, you just don't hand over your child's social and emotional well-being or mental health skills to random whoever at the school, especially when there is no problem with it. Just like going to the doctors and giving them medicine when they aren't sick, there is risk of harm.
Wrap it up,
Did my
please.
time go?
Yes,
Okay.
thank
Well,
you.
real quick, I'm not trying to be rude. I've looked at your model, and I just see some flaws in your model. I think it's too big, it's way too complex, and it's really not going to work. You have social emotional learning and mental health, and they're clumped together. But actually, they're actually two different things and two different models, and I'd love to maybe talk to you guys about that a little bit more in the future.
Thank you very much. William Scoos?
Bill Skew, Sesternay Lane. I want to discuss the process for getting to speak at the Board of Education meetings. I think it's important for people who are here and watching online to understand how it works. The first step is to ask permission of some anonymous person to speak to the people who are our elected representatives. The next step is to submit your name, physical address, email address, and telephone number. The next requirement is to submit in writing the statement you want to make. Then, if you are approved by this anonymous person, you have a time limit of 3 minutes to make your statement. Of course, before you start your statement, you have to state your name and address, even though you've been called by name to speak. You are bullied into stating your address for the whole world to hear, even though the board already has this information and more. The stating your address part is especially troubling since it invites potentially serious problems for the town's citizens who would like to speak to their elected representatives. Who knows who will show up at our front door at any time of day because of this? This process is clearly meant to intimidate people from addressing their elected representatives. These people don't want to hear from us. We're their subjects, their servants. We discuss them by our mere presence. They certainly do not want to hear what we have to say, or God forbid what we may ask of them. These board members think they are our rulers, our betters. Now let's talk about the process of challenging the pornographic books that are in the schools. This is a very secretive process. The people who are chosen to do the review requested by a challenge are drawn from the same group of people who put these filthy books in our schools in the first place. We don't know who they are, what their backgrounds are, what their areas of expertise may be. We know nothing about them. During this secretive 60-day process, the board and the superintendent use it as a shield from having to answer any questions about these pornographic books. It's clearly a sham designed to keep parents and taxpayers silent and removed from the day-to-day functions of the schools. Each of these processes I've described are designed to keep parents and taxpayers away from the board members and the superintendent. We should ask ourselves why. What are they so afraid of? What are they hiding? What is it they don't want us to know? I'd like to remind the members of the board who sit through meeting after meeting in stony silence that this silence does not prevent you from being held accountable for your actions. Even though you are controlled by an outside group, you will not avoid responsibility and criminal prosecution for providing and trafficking in pornography to minors.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure where to start other than, I think it's okay to disagree with one another. I certainly disagree with 100%, I think, of what you said, except one thing I do agree with. It is a shame that we've come to the point where we have to be so regulated with public comment. Part of the reason is because we've had people come in and speak, and that's led to kids leaving in tears. It's led to people on the other side viewing it. It's led to people's names being shared that's been harmful to the community. Part of our job is to protect everyone. Part of the reason you give your name is so we get lots of foils because people feel that we're not transparent. And we get challenged on a lot of things. So we get challenged if that person is speaking as a resident or not. So part of that process is to show that you're standing there in front of us saying your name and your address. showing full transparency that you're here, you're a resident, and you have a perspective, and you're going to share it. The other part that I would just disagree, and I know for a fact I'm not going to change your mind. I promise you this. When I hear you say you share things and no one listens or cares, and where we sit stone-faced, that's not the case. And I will tell you, with this book challenge in the 60 days, it's not a farce. And the 60 days was meant for when a book is challenged, not when 4 books are challenged at one time. And the people that are in that process are all reading all 4 books. They are looking at ways to assess the 4 books objectively, including looking at the term pornography, what that means, what's the legal definition, what's the purpose of the book, what's the intent of the book, what is the educational value versus any harm that it causes. Is this book helpful to others? How many? They're going through the gamut, and the time. Oh my goodness! So we have several people that are impartial, despite what you might allege, that are looking at all these books in an objective manner. We don't want books in front of kids that are damaging. And it's our job to do our due diligence to make sure that the books we put in front of kids, or the books that are accessible to kids, are developmentally appropriate, and certainly are not pornographic. That's the process that we're in right now. So one book to review, we have the 60 days for the committee to make a recommendation. We have 4 at the same time going on right now with the same people that we're pulling together, having conversations with, so that they can come with a recommendation that is an intellectual determination based on a set of criteria. The other thing that I would share that's very interesting, you're right, we have over 130,000 books in our libraries. And 3 of the ones that are in our library, I think there's one of them is at Sutherland, one is at Mendon, and one is at both Mendon and Sutherland. And when we look at how many students have checked those books out a year, we average between 0 and 1.5. And at the same time, we're spending 30 plus hours on reviewing this. And I guess it doesn't matter if 0 or 4 people check it out, but I share that with you for context. That we are doing our diligence, knowing that no matter what decision is made, there's going to be people like you that disagree or agree, and there's going to be people on the other side that disagree or agree. Our job is to do our best to be objective. And not let our personal views get in the way of what should be in our libraries or not, and what books are taken away or not. Our diligence is there. The people around this table, and boy, and Amy, I'm sorry, but when you said we spend way too much time on SEL, I guess my comment is thank you to that. Because when you look at what our kids are doing right now, you walk into an elementary classroom, doesn't matter what household you came from or what your background is. You sit down, and you are on the carpet, crisscross applesauce, introducing yourself to your classmates, talking about the weekend, bringing yourself down to decompress, knowing you're in a safe environment, so you can focus on reading, so you can focus on math. So that's the part that really burns me when you keep saying that, and I get you have your credentials of being a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I'm not sure which, but our staff are trained. You heard me in our budget guidelines talk about a robust professional development. It is robust. We never put a teacher in front of students that aren't competent enough to talk about SEL. We're going to disagree in a lot of what we do in education, because right now a lot of social issues are brought in education that never were before. We will continue doing our diligence. We will continue saying we're wrong when we're wrong and we're going to get better, or we're on the right path. Our focus will always remain on what's best for kids. And it's really hard to communicate this when you're not in our schools. because each of you are coming from your own family. When you put 6,000 students in a district, all from different backgrounds, different issues, different abilities, different disabilities, and we put them all together, our job is to make our schools like a microcosm of our society and help students learn how to navigate things that life throws at them, along with reading, writing, and math. And by the way, our reading, writing, and math scores are pretty darn good. I'll end with this. I want to thank you, Mr. Shaughnessy and Mr. Skuse, for coming in. I know you've been here multiple times. Amy, you've been here multiple times. You and I have met before. You believe in something, and you're communicating that. It's not being knocked down. We listen to what you're saying. We may not agree. We may agree with some, but we're listening. And thank you for coming in with a different perspective, and others for a different perspective. That's life. We're going to have different perspectives. Tonight, what happened, I love. We had different perspectives. We had different viewpoints. And oh my gosh, no one's yelling. We're talking about it. And I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone being here and feeling comfortable enough to share their perspective. Thank you.
I have one more public comment to read, but I also want to.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought we were done.
Nope. And I also have one comment that I'd like to make. And Mr. Cuse, I'm not going to change your opinion, but you said one thing that really struck me to the core, and I want to say this for everybody else that's listening and that's here, and I addressed it before public comment. We are not trying to bully or intimidate people to not come and speak. And if people aren't comfortable with the process and they want to address the board, there are alternative ways to do that. We respond to all the emails that we get, so there's that way. And I'm about to do another way, which if you're not comfortable coming here and speaking in front of everybody, you can submit your submission through the online process, and I will do what I'm about to do, and that is read it for you. And so this comment is from Dorothy Bausch-Barker from 17 Northfield Gate, Pittsford, New York. Our libraries are refuges for our students and places of learning about new perspectives, cultures, and thoughts. Banning books is unacceptable. If parents do not want their own children to read any particular work, they are free to prevent that in their own home. However, it is not okay to ban books for all students. Many books that self-claimed experts are denigrating focus on Black and brown stories or LGBTQ stories. It can be hard when changes to society leave some folks feeling scared and uncertain. That does not translate to the right to force themselves into the lives of others. Claims of pornography are false according to the definition and simply inflammatory in order to elicit an outraged reaction. This then leads to action without thought or time for consideration. Removing the stories of historically marginalized communities increases the already high risk for violence against these populations, and extremism leads to violence in general. Our libraries are already doing a wonderful job of thoughtfully considering what to add to our libraries. Let's let the experts do their job. That's all of our public comment for this evening. If I could get a motion to adjourn. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Sarah. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Our next meeting is May 9th.
Thanks, everyone.